Avanthi ji, what is your opinion about the performance that we just witnessed right now?
Oh, Valli ji, it has been. Hello, how are you? It's been a long time. It was such a pleasure to see you perform and to hear you speak. It took me back in time. I'm actually quite emotional, not just because of the totality of your performance, you see, the integration of what, that's why we called it poetry in motion. It's not just the totality of your performance, but I mean, you have been on the scene, you know, in the fray, as it were, for almost 5 decades. Yeah. And
certainly.
Certainly, right? So I'm going back to the 80s when I was studying in Chennai. You were in Stella Maris, Memory Lane. So all of that emotion is there too. And then I was remembering as you were emerging on the firmament, you know, the dance in the 80s. And we would go to our dance classes and then we'd say, oh, Valli's mannerisms, right? You know, the way you would
personal.
But then by the 80s and 90s, it became style. Yeah, it became a style actually. We've lost it somewhere. What happened?
No, I can hear you.
Ah, okay. So that whatever, you know, those flourishes that we saw became a style. And then now, but still what is so amazing, and so there is a Valli style, you know, but for those who can see, there is also the Pandanallur style, right?
Absolutely.
So there is Pandanallur, the great tradition, which is synonymous now with you, but also you, Valli, right? So the two traditions, for those who can see that they don't really fuse, right? But they interweave in such a fascinating way that they still retain their distinctiveness and also their interconnectedness. Is that correct? Huh?
Yeah. Well, absolutely right, because as I said, you've seen me dance over decades, and so you understand that aspect. I interpret what you called, and for those who don't know, a particular family of Bharatanatyam. Bani is actually a family, isn't it? Like we have genetic markers in different families. You have genetic markers, so it has certain specific aesthetics. It is a body dynamic, which is specific to the Pandanallur Bani, which I imbibed from my masters. But I think the beauty of these gurus is they gave me the foundation. They allowed me to be my own dancer. And that for me is very important, because only then our forms, as you know, can live and grow. And that's why when I had my Bani festival, I used the image of the banyan tree, where the gurus are the branches.
Branches, yes.
And from each there is a root which becomes a tree. But that they're connected to the tree, but each is separate and unique. Yes, so, but one thing I do want to say, Avanthi, please call me Valli, with no G's between us.
Thank you.
Avanthi, an important thing is, you know, in the name of enrichment, very often people throw the baby away with the bathwater, as we have seen. That I think we can't arrogate to ourselves and say that what we produce is better than what has come down as a growing form for generations. So for me, I have to be true to my Pandanallur Bani. That is the bedrock on which I rest as an artist. That gives me my strength. It's my foundation. But it is also me. It is also about my personality, my engagement with that style. And this is where, as I said, Master used to say, you know what you call those flourishes, that kulike. Yes, kulike was that enjoyment. It came from Pandanallur Chokkalingam Pillai, his great old master. It is, I follow his vision, what he was trying to teach us. And the other thing, you know, styles evolve. The Pandanallur style, you know, in those days had a reputation for being very rigid. It was linear, it was rich, it was geometric. But evolution happens. Chokkalingam Pillai sir wanted to create a seamless style, fluid line, where there was grace and yet the line. And he used to get so frustrated trying to convey this. Then I've spoken about this often, he gave this example because these masters taught also through metaphor and images. He gave me the example of this toy with a feather furled at the tip. You blow on the whistle and the feather unfurls. He said, let your arms unfurl. And suddenly the image was clear in my mind, and then it evolved into what I do now. So the style has also evolved, but keeping the character and the vocabulary, you can enrich but not discard. That is what I feel.
What comes through for me, from what you're saying is, and you said this also eloquently, I think, but in passing in the film Lasi Kavya, which I have been seeing again and again. What comes through clearly is something that you are saying so powerfully, that the great gurus were actually crafting their own modern style on the new dancers. And in your case, the Pandanalu teachers were shaping a new vision on your body. Is that correct?
I think it's necessary that each thinking guru, exactly as you said, they have to add dimensions. They have to grow. Otherwise we become fossils, museum pieces. There are people who often think, critics of classical dance, that we present exactly what is taught to us. We grow as dancers, we grow as human beings. So they were, as you said, also, you use the good word, crafting the art around the dancers, and it was their aesthetic, what they envisaged, which they wanted the students to interpret.
The new style for the modern nation.
I don't know if it is
an old new style for a modern nation, a contemporary Bharatanatyam style.
Yes, because I believe Bharatanatyam is contemporary. We are modern women. Yeah. We can relate to this dance form. It speaks to us and we speak through it. So it is a continuous process of renewal, regeneration, of growth, so that it is always, you have to make it communicate. And that is for me contemporary, when you can speak to somebody. Arundhati Subramaniam, this noted poet, she said it so beautifully. She said, the challenge for the Bharatanatyam dancer is to make the then and there, the here and now.
Yeah.
So which is precisely what one has to do without compromising the form.
Yeah. So the tradition is dynamic.
Yes, it is. Rooted in the past, enriched in the present, reaching out to the future.
Brilliant. That's very well said. And the margam is the grammar. It's the fodder, pretty much. It is the substance. It is the essence, right? The margam meaning the vocabulary, the
repertoire
items.
Vocabulary.
Both, isn't it? The repertoire, the margam, the items.
Yes,
which is now global today. Everybody is doing the margam everywhere in the world and learning everywhere in the world, the margam. So the margam as the repertoire, and then the grammar, right? These are dynamic forms.
And it's changing. For instance, there is a feeling that the margam sometimes people believe is today. If young dancers tell me that they're asked by the organizers, oh, don't do a margam. What is the theme? Do you have a thematic presentation? If you have a theme, it should come because you are compelled to do something. You have a vision of a theme. But the margam is actually a path. It is a beautiful framework into which we can add, we can curate what we want. So for me, I love the margam because it offers me so many possibilities. It is like one of these master chef terminology. It's like a wonderful meal, or the Indian terminology, the thali meal that we eat. You decide what dishes, and there's balance, there are different flavors, and then contrast in texture. All this you have to bring into the margam, which is but it is it gives you a framework within which to work, and it's such a beautifully evolved path. You have Bala Saraswati Ma, how she says it's like entering a temple, and it is true. It's such a beautiful way.
Yeah,
it's a path, a journey.
You just gave me my completing sentence, which is that Bala Saraswati, the great Bala Saraswati, the iconic Bala Saraswati, conceptualized the margam, the sequence of items, Alaripu, Shabdam, Varnam, as in the metaphor of the temple.
Yes.
So if Valli of today were to provide a conceptualization for the margam, which is global, what might that be? How would temple still, the iconography of the Indian temple still hold as the formulation to sort of think the journey of the margam? Or do we need something else now?
I think every dancer must find her margam. Each dancer, and for me, because for me, I am a seeker, and ultimately dance is a prayer for me. However much of the erotic and the existential, you might have all these colors, but for me, it is about reaching within and trying to access the sacred. So for me, that analogy, I can't improve on what Balama has said. And what she said about dance being the link between you and your maker.
I'd like to ask Saskia ji, as we were talking about margam, what were the innovative changes that we could bring into a traditional margam? What do you think about it?
Namaskaram, Namaskaram. So I'm so happy to see you. Do you mind if I would first like to relate to Alarmel Valli's dance? Because, this I will connect to how I feel about the Varnam, about the Margam. Basically, when I saw your dance today, of course, I've been following you for many, many years, because the first time I saw you, it was in your own home in Chennai. And we were invited by you to I think it was a performance for the Alliance Française. And at that time, yes, I was 22 and you were 19.
Yes.
And this has been a lasting inspiration, because the joy that you exuded in that performance, I feel it is the feature of you, and it is the feature indeed of your inheritance. What you emphasize, that this is what your guru taught you and told you, that the essence of the dance is actually this exuberating joy. Because basically dance is shubham, it's mangam, it's happiness.
Yes.
And it is absolute happiness, and it spreads happiness. And you did that at age in your home, in this beautiful theater in your home. And I will never forget that intensely lyrical character of your Abhinaya. That is one feature. It really touched me, and it really encouraged me that this is what I want to follow. This is, I want, because I've been dancing classical ballet, and I started Bharatanatyam in the Netherlands, and then I became a student of Nandini Ramani, style, and I saw you, and your naturalness, your spontaneousness, and your joy, that was very impressive, and that never left me, and it is there. You haven't changed. You have, on the contrary, what was essentially there, you have enlarged it. It is very, very impressive.
Thank you, Saskia.
The other thing which impressed me it is really moving. In 1975, what also struck me, and that's been a lesson also to me, the movement of your feet and the placement of your feet. It was completely natural, and how you manipulated the force of gravity, just letting the foot fall, not stamping the foot, but let it fall. And the result was a beautiful sonorous sound from the feet.
Wow.
in flamenco, that is, if you beat the hands, there is a beating of the hand, which is called sordido, which is this. And there's claro. And you had absolutely claro feet, which was very musical. And I think the way how you have developed since our first meeting, and then we met in the Netherlands, and again in Chennai, I think you are the example of a dancer who is a dancer for life. You are dancing because you had to dance. It is a vritti. In the past, Devadasis danced because it was Devadasi Murai. It was their right to perform, or it was Devadasi vritti. And you have really cast your life in that vritti. You are a dancer. You were born a dancer, and you will live a dancer, I think, even in the next life, because it is so strong. You have to dance, and it is completely evident the way how you dance even today, and the examples which you gave. So that kind of brings me to your question of the Margam, because I want to have this personal flashback of how we have come to know each other and how your dance has impressed me over the years. I feel that you are an example of how the Margam can continue even with contemporary pieces, with contemporary poetry, but even going back to Sanskrit poetry. Of course, you have a very strong inheritance of Telugu poetry, but there is Tamil poetry, and even you have experimented with English poetry. But what is most important is you really hit the core of the human condition, and the human condition trying to orient ourselves in this world. And that's a very emotional layer of that. And then when I come to what is very important for you, nature and life, I think this is really the new draft of the Varnam for today. Let the competition stay. I think a Varnam is extremely clever, as a choreography. It's excellent. But then I think, taking the modern and the old, going back and forth, like you are doing, and you're doing it so with such conviction and with such kind of, you can believe in what you're doing. Seeing you dance, you can believe in that. So even in Bala Saraswati's style, Auchitya is very important. And Auchitya basically comes from Uch, which is to delight. And how can we delight? And then we comes to this word of sattva. We can delight. There is a lot of sattva in this. Now, what does sattva mean? English is sometimes a burden. It's not truth. It is beingness, sattva, beingness. So basically, we are talking about life. We are talking about nature. We are talking about the tattvas. We are talking about being cast in life. And the way how you are really going through your heritage, Indian heritage, not only the Tamil heritage, but the Indian heritage of this human condition problem. Where are we? Where are we heading for? Yenda Prayoga. What is that? What is the message? That is really that search for sattva. Now, Bharat was very keen about Auchitya and dancing in a natural way. Not in kind of artificial, trying to be very sophisticated, trying to be very excellent, trying to be very, very kind of technically strong. You are extremely strong technically, but actually what remains is that search. And in Bala Saraswati's time, or in let's go back to Bharatanatyam Shastra. This sattva is really the key to Siddhi. Siddhi in Shastra it's called success. But again, not a happy translation. Siddhi basically means power. And it is female. Siddhi is female, it's a female noun. And of course, Prakriti is female. It is nature. And then there is this kind of, how do we feel that kind of Siddhi? There are two ways of Siddhi. Manushi Siddhi, where people clap and say, bas, bas, more. And Daiviki Siddhi. And you have given beautiful examples of Daiviki Siddhi, that Italian lady who cried and came to you. Because Daiviki Siddhi is proven by Roman Shastra, by chills and goosebumps, where the body responds to the body, where the body responds to nature. And I think this is eternal. As long as we human beings are there in the Bhava Mandala, in the place of becoming, we will be searching for this. And you're giving wonderful examples of this search. And this search, I feel, how I see it, that's your vritti. You have been dancing and you do nothing else but dancing. But it expands and it expands and expands and it changes and it is created. And you're totally autonomous on the basis of tradition.
Yes.
So this is the way how I would kind of draft, a model or a way for a new Margam.
How beautiful.
I would like to interrupt. I'm so sorry because we are because of the time constraint that we have.
Can I just say one thing to Saskia? I really am touched by what she said, because she just 3 points. She spoke about spontaneity, about life, the dance being about joy. This is very important, I feel, particularly to a younger generation, where we are not dancing just to impress or to create an effect. And this spontaneity is vital. We need to internalize and then forget what we are doing. So that spontaneity is a vital aspect, which I feel these days increasingly we are losing, because we are much more conscious of how we pose, how we strike a very impressive position, the leaps, the stretches, the physicality. So our dance is so much more than that. And that is what Saskia so beautifully expressed. And I'm totally in agreement. But thank you for all the wonderful things.
Definitely. Meduri ji, in these challenging times where most of the teaching is happening online, how effective is to teach or learn a classical art form like Bharatanatyam sustainably? What is your opinion on that?
You're asking me, or
Meduri ji, yeah, to Meduri ji.
To me, okay. Well, it is a very difficult time we are in, a global pandemic. I am a dancer, but I'm also a professor. I teach at the university, and we are everywhere in Europe. The arts and humanities are under siege, and our programs are being cut, and dance teaching has to happen online now because of the global pandemic. So it is, I suppose, both a blessing in some way, because we are going to now develop new modes of teaching because of this crisis, right, of the global pandemic. But also, Valiji was saying this in her film as well. Something is lost in the age of technology, in this transmission, in this mediation through technology. And what is lost is that actual visceral presence, the being with the other, the tactility, the touch, all of that, which is also problematic today. But yes, so something is gained in this moment of, gloom and doom that is upon us. But something is also being lost, and the world that we will come into is not going to be the same ever again. So it's a new world that we will all enter whenever that new moment will be, post-COVID. Yeah.
Saskia ji, what's your opinion on that?
It is, of course, it is a very, very kind of threatening situation we are in. And we do not know where it will end, how it will develop. But let me strike the positive note, because we have enough negative notes on the situation we are in. When I think of either high school or university, basically this kind of knowledge transfer is based in literacy. It is either reading or writing. It is an interaction with actually the book, with the alphabet, with the technology of reading and writing. But reading and writing, the alphabet can neither catch sound, nor can it catch image. So the modes of teaching that we are now entering are multimedial modes of teaching. And we'll have to consider what an image does, what an emotion does musically what an emotion does in non-verbal language. Because we think very often of language as being verbal. That's a European kind of literary attitude. But actually, language is not only verbal, it is sounds and images at the same time. It is a fully fledged bodily expression. So, multimedia actually force us, after having kind of chased orality out of the door of academia, it forces us to return to a secondary orality of word, sound, image, the multimedia way. And this is a different type of cognition, a cognition that had receded into the background. I'm sure that, SPIC MACAY, you're really making designs how to compose a program. That's very different from writing a book. And nowadays, reading is not a poor performance. So in a way, we lose, but in another way, we gain. And the thirst, the daham, the trishna, to real interaction, real time, real space, maybe is more forcefully expressed through multimedia than through reading a book. So let's take it positively.
Valli, what values do the future generations need to keep in mind to carry forward this heritage ahead?
We're not talking COVID and all that. We're just talking in general, right?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, this is, I think, it doesn't change. It's constant where it comes to the arts or in anything in life that when you want to achieve something. My mother was my bedrock, my anchor, my mentor. And three things I would like to state: Shraddha, Sadhana, and Bhakti. Shraddha is the reverence, the dedication, the respect with which you approach something. And that, my mother used to speak about dance as sacred commitment. I used to be a dreamer, reading a book, and used to be very playful. So I remember once I made a mistake. I was taking things easily. She said, you want to dance, there are no half measures. If you do something, do the best that you're capable of. And I tried saying, oh, someone's making faces at me from my cousins are trying to distract me behind the window. She said, even if a troop of monkeys is making faces at you, you cannot afford to let your mind jump here and there. So that you need to have that focus, which is what I tell my students. Then sadhana is practice. Without that discipline to achieve a particular goal, these days we want instant results. We press a button, then we want something for it. And you have instant foods, instant cake mixes. You can't have instant art because it is blood, sweat, and tears. Practice, practice, practice. My mother used to make sure I got up at 5 in the morning every day to make sure I could finish practice and go to school. I'd rush there late every day. Then I'd come back in the evening, go over the lessons with my mother. And I tell my students this, your body is capable of doing much more when you practice than you think it is. I was a weak, thin child. My mother said, the dance, you're not weak. The dance makes you stronger than you are. So if I would sit and I'd say, I can't sit more. She said, sit. Then I would lower myself and say, my legs are breaking. She'd say, carry on. After they break, you can stop. So with this attitude, I tell my students the same thing, that push yourself beyond to see how far you can go. And only then you will realize what you're capable of. So practice is internalization, because when you practice, you are in your element. You're like a fish in water, a bird soaring in the sky. You have that freedom. It liberates you. And finally, bhakti, which is the devotion, but not just devotion. I think being true to whatever you do. Whatever you do in life, it's vital. The truth. I think these three things are important. Be true to yourself and whatever you choose to do.
Thank you so much for the wonderful advice, ma'am. I would like to once again borrow Valliji's words as a concluding note. See the music and hear the dance. I think this is the mantra that can make this art form multi-layered and meditative. Thank you so much, Valliji, Saskia ji, and Meduri ji, for a fascinating and insightful discussion. We will now move on to the Q&A session to take up questions from the viewers. Once again, I would like to request all of you that if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment section on Facebook or YouTube. And also please mention to whom you are addressing the question.
May I just you to
yeah, sure.
You can for the remarkable work. If we don't have SPIC MACAY, we really need this enrichment that young people get. So thank you, and thank Dr. Kiran Seth for having founded this and all the volunteers.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The first question is from Flex. Do you believe that Bharatanatyam should be preserved as an eternal style or could be transformed or translated into a modern dance style? The question is to Avanthi ji.
Oh. What is, I can be very clever about this. We have to define what is ancient and what is modern. And Valli has just said that it's a dynamic braiding, isn't it? The ancient returning as the now, the then as the here. So what is modern and who, from whose point of view? Because what is modern to me may not be modern to you. So it's a relative term, really, in many ways. So I turn the question back to him. So we'll have to rethink these nomenclatures, really.
Thank you, Avanthi ma'am.
Yeah.
The next question is to Alarmel Valli ji. The question is from Shreya Arya. While performing solo Bharatanatyam, the dancer takes up the role of all the characters in the story. How does posture, gesture, expressions reflect the individual state of mind or emotional state?
I didn't get that really. How does the posture...
How does posture, gesture, expressions reflect the individual state of mind?
You mean when you... Is she...
Because the dancer takes up the role of all the characters in the story.
Yeah. It is actually a very... it is a challenge. I tell my students, when in one song, 1 minute we are one character, next minute we are a totally different role, we are playing something. For me, the key is to internalize the song. When we talk, for instance, we have inflections and cadences in our language. When we shift and we are trying to say something else, then we change to that cadence when you're addressing someone else. When you're talking to you, when I'm talking to someone else, I will change automatically, instinctively. If we internalize the dance, and which comes from constant practice and reflection, introspection, I think that this transition from character to character, you don't have to consciously think. It is what Saskia also said, that it is not so much an intellectual process of now if I do this, that reflects this. It becomes as natural as the rhythms of breathing. So if I am showing that woman who's very sad, and then I'm showing a friend or the lover looking at her face, something switches. It's like, it's a continuous transition that's happening within me, but it happens instinctively, spontaneously, and it is, as I said, natural as the rhythms of breathing. So that comes from internalization. I don't really think that this particular stance, sometimes we do think maybe we should do it like this. For instance, when I was trying to portray the flower, I said, do I have to have a body language that portrays a flower? What is the language? Then I realized it had nothing to do with just flowers, that it has to do with feeling that angst. And then your body changes. Then I become the devotee and I become the flower. So it happens naturally.
One way I have written about this, Valli, I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in. A different way to think about what happens in the actuality of performance, a Bharatanatyam recital, is that the dancer is actually becoming all the time. Yeah, she is not just one thing. No. She becomes that which she embodies or portrays, and so she is a changeling phenomenon, right?
Yes.
Constantly becoming, never static in one place, and becoming the essence of that which she embodies.
That is why I said you have to internalize the characters and the dance to the point where you are that, are that, but you can make transitions with ease without consciously thinking about what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you're in your element, then it becomes natural, that changing of character. You have to be totally immersed.
Thank you so much, Valli and Avanthi ji, for that.
Can I join the discussion?
The next question. Sorry.
Can I join this discussion, because this is a theme which I find very
interesting. Of course. Go ahead.
It is the becoming, because what is very important. I mean, this is a household word, bhava. I mean, in Bharatanatyam, bhava is extremely important. And of course, this is, again, if you think, what does the word actually say? It is from becoming, from who? Bhava is from becoming, and it's not only that, it's bhava, it is actually a causative to make become. And there I would like to go back to, what my teacher in Tirutani taught me, the Devadasi of the Murugan temple. Really, very often people ask me, did they do Murugan Padams? No, they didn't do Murugan Padams. They did Sringara. Why Sringara? Because they had to create the presence of Sringara. So basically what you do in performing is you create presences. You create not only your own becoming the character, but you create the presence of the character. The character is physically there, although the character is not at all there.
Yeah.
But it is felt as if the character is there. So the bhava, of course, it goes first with internalization, that the performer really understands, feels, has this complete cognition of what it is. And once you get what it actually is that you're trying to do, to create, the bhava is being kind of evolved and presenced. And this, I think, for the theater situation is important, but it was important in the temple as well. Ranganayaki never performed to show herself. She performed in order to create presences. And that's why she really emphasized it has to have bhava. Your abhinaya has to have bhava, not to show yourself, but to create a presence.
Yes, true.
Thank you, Saskia ji, for the wonderful explanation.
Sorry.
Saskia ji, the next question is for you. And the question is from Chinmaya Arjun Raja. You conduct regular workshops in India for dance students from Europe. What's the level of interest in Indian classical dances in Eastern Europe? What are the main reasons for students there to take up Indian dance forms, and what are their challenges?
Well, the situation, I'm now living in Hungary. I am from the Netherlands, but I spent half of my life, let's say, in India. So where am I? Okay, I can answer you geographically, I'm in Hungary. But the dance scene here is different from where it was, for instance, in the Netherlands, where actually it was in the 70s, 80s. That is where you find the situation in Budapest is now. And now we have a strong influx of Indians from the diaspora, and that really gives an input of realism, which I think is very important. But my workshops in Tamil Nadu, they are not related to Eastern Europe. They are not even related so much to the Netherlands. Actually, they are related to the Indian audience in the diaspora, who are searching for their own identity. And they're looking for an identity in the porutam, in the qualities of the soil from where their forefathers came. And they are lost in many cases for their identity search in the kind of diasporic understanding of what India is, but they don't have the touch, they don't have the taste, they don't have the sensorium, because it's very interesting, you start with Prakriti, but these are, of course, the tattvas, these are the elements, but they are related to the indriyas, to the jnana indriyas, the karma indriyas, the senses of cognition and the senses of action. And if you have not had it direct, real-time, real space contact with these environments, it's very difficult to really feel, because knowledge comes through experience. So actually, many of my students who came to these workshops in Tamil Nadu, they're Indians from the diaspora, from New Zealand, from Singapore, a lot from America, and one from Europe. So I cannot answer your question the way you have framed the question, either Eastern Europe or no, it is much broader, and it's basically Indians in the diaspora, young Indians in the age group 20 to 40.
Thank you, Saskia ji.
I hope still it is an answer to the question.
Okay. We are now at the end of the session. Thank you, Valli ma'am, Saskia ji, Avanthi ji, for sharing your valuable thoughts. Also, thank you to viewers for asking some interesting questions. I believe it was an enlightening and delightful session for all of us.